You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com. Bitcoin, Ether, Ripple, Litecoin, and more. Cryptocurrencies and other digital assets are taking the financial world by storm. This exploding market provides everything a savvy trader needs: volatility, volume, and liquidity. Provided you know how to find it. That's where we come in. Welcome to the Crypto Rundown. Each week, we'll break down the latest trading activity, trends, and developments on everything from coins to tokens, futures, and even OTC options. If it's moving the crypto markets, then you'll find it on the Crypto Rundown. Now it's time to dive into the exploding world of cryptocurrencies and digital assets. It's time for the Crypto Rundown.
All right, everybody. That music can mean only one thing. It is Monday. It is somewhere around 2 p.m. Central. Yes, it is time once again for the Crypto Rundown, the program here on the Options Insider Radio Network, where we go a little bit beyond our traditional purview of equity and index and indeed even futures options and head on out to the exciting and ever-changing world of all things crypto. Going to talk the options, of course, the volume, the volatility, the open interest, the skew, all that good stuff, as well as the spot, the futures, and a bunch of other fun things as well. Remember, if you like what you hear, not just for this program, but for, of course, the entire network, go ahead and leave a review on your platform of choice. This show tends to attract a different and an intriguing crowd. So if you like what you hear, keep those reviews coming so new folks can continue to discover this program and, as a result, the network. And, of course, however you're listening, whatever platform you're using to get the show, make sure you leave those questions and comments out there so new folks can continue to discover the show, A, and B, so we can have some fun stuff to chat about here on the old program. Speaking of fun stuff to chat about, let's get to it. It's time to roll out the old Crypto Hot Seat.
Forget about cold storage. It's time to turn up the heat on thought leaders from the world of cryptocurrencies and digital assets. It's time to take their place on the Crypto Hot Seat.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Crypto Hot Seat, the portion of the show we welcome on guests from throughout the world of crypto, derivatives, and indeed beyond, and proceed to pick their brains for the benefit of you, the listener. And today we have a twofer squeezing in to the old hot seat. We have ZUBIN KOTICHA, a.k.a. ZK, and Andrew LEONE from OPYN, OPYN, good old OPYN. Gentlemen, welcome to the Crypto Rundown program.
Thanks so much for having us. Really appreciate it.
Maybe ZK, we'll start with you. As you like to do with all of our first-timers here on the network, why don't you go ahead and give our audience a little bit of your background in the crypto, indeed, financial markets, and how you found your way to co-founding OPYN.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I'm one of those weird kids who started trading when I was 12 or 13 years old. I just found spot markets incredibly exciting. There was just this whole world when I learned about finance of people competing for alpha and insane amounts of kind of information that exists out there that culminated in a single price. I found that idea to be fascinating. Went to Berkeley, and then I started studying computer science as well as kind of having that finance background. And I realized there's a lot of things going on in that intersection between finance and the world of computer science. So lots of things happening in the fintech world, But cryptocurrency, especially Ethereum, was what really got me excited. It seemed like all these amazing new financial assets were getting created by, people that weren't affiliated with any large financial organization. And it felt like a real hotbed of innovation. And so I decided that's where I kind of wanted to dedicate my time and spend the next few years doing research, working on different projects in the space. After graduating, had a really good team of Alexis Galba and Aparna Krishnan, also from Berkeley. We decided to start a decentralized finance company. And one thing we saw as one of the most exciting markets that was still growing and hadn't really saturated in crypto yet was options. And so that's what led us to start Open in December of last year.
Certainly it's music to my ears here, Zubin. And Andrew, same question for you, sir. Give us an overview of your background first, and then what is it that led you to becoming the head of research over there at Open?
Yeah, so I come from what we like to call a traditional finance background. So that's to say a non-crypto finance background. I was most recently a derivatives trader. Most recently, I was the head VIX and vol trader at Nomura. And I worked at a variety of different sell-side investment banks over the years. I was kind of bitten by the crypto bug in 2013, discovering Bitcoin, and then kind of followed along with the development of Ethereum. And what I saw in that was kind of a very interesting sort of product that can disrupt a lot of the things that I saw in the traditional financial system. And when I saw kind of what has come out in the decentralized finance ecosystem over the last couple of years, it kind of convinced me that this is the space that I wanted to move into. And then I got connected with the folks over at Open and, saw that they were building basically decentralized options protocol. And it seemed like a natural fit with my options trading background.
Was it a big shift to go from the world of VIX options and the VIX futures term structure and all that fun stuff out to the world of crypto there, Andrew?
Yeah, I mean, it's quite different. It's, a lot of different problems to solve. And, the crypto options market is still in its infancy compared to, the traditional financial options market. So there's definitely a playbook of, things that have worked and things that haven't worked. But I think there's also a lot of interesting innovation that will come out in this space that hasn't been tried in the traditional financial market.
Certainly hot things going on in the VIX and volatility land right now around the election. Do you ever miss it, at least for these brief moments, Andrew? Or is crypto keeping you busy these days?
Yeah, I mean, I miss it from time to time. I do keep myself busy trading in the crypto space, and the vols, of crypto assets are nothing to, nothing to laugh about. Those things, are pretty high vol, and so it reminds me a little bit of my VIX vol trading days.
All right, let's get into it then. Obviously, you're here to discuss your platform. So what the heck is Open? What are you guys doing over there?
Yeah, so there's a lot of kind of different pieces and prerequisite knowledge, but the basic idea is that we are a platform for trading and creating options on cryptocurrency. So the idea that makes Open very different is that it's a decentralized platform, meaning that like I, as Zubin, if I were CEO of a centralized exchange, I could shut it off. I could do a lot of things with it, kind of gate it, make people pay for information, set spreads myself and fees. But we really can't do that with Open. We've released a piece of software that's running on Ethereum, and kind of like the more crypto native way of thinking about software is that no one can control it. You put it on this blockchain, it just runs. And so it's kind of a different paradigm mentally, but we have an options platform where people are creating, minting, trading, hedging with options, but that software is running in the cloud controlled by no one. It's a pretty mind-blowing concept.
Yeah, it is a little counterintuitive when you think of it, because you're trying to provide a effectively a centralized or a one gateway point of access to an area that is completely decentralized. So when you think about it at 10,000 foot level, it's kind of mind blowing there.
Yeah, and honestly, it's very much experimental. These things are still being built. I think the final iteration of what options look like from Open a year from now is going to be completely different than it is today, and that's really exciting because that means we're innovating. We're moving towards something new.
And you guys aren't talking about your traditional options. You actually call them something else. You call them O tokens. So walk us through, what are O tokens?
Right. So the most basic idea is we came up with this kind of challenge for ourselves, which was, can we create an options instrument that is encoded as software that is run by no one? So if the entire team that created Open were to just disappear, Open would still run. And that means you had to have a certain set of assumptions. There's no trust at all in this world. Like, there's no entity that can play the part of like a central clearinghouse. There's no entity that can look at kind of the credit worthiness of individuals when you think about things like margining. So what an O token is a protocol. It's a way to create an option contract between two counterparties where they don't necessarily know each other. They don't necessarily trust each other. They just trust that the code is written correctly because the code is open source and essentially public. And so
I think we lost Zubin there. Andrew, maybe you can pick up where he left off, sir.
Yeah, so it's an option sort of trading protocol, and it's trustless. And I think basically kind of the initial iteration of the protocol is basically American physically settled options. And with this initial O token iteration, it's options that are basically 100% collateralized. And so, as Zubin mentioned, the future is going to basically expand from this kind of first sort of option product that we call these O tokens. But, as we know from the, traditional option world, there's a lot more complexity and a lot of different types of options and different, ways to increase capital efficiency, et cetera.
My next question, of course, is how do you get around the counterparty issue? And one of the ways to do that, of course, is to fully collateralize it up front. So you guys are effectively saying, hey, you're coming in and you're going to pay for these options. You're going to put the collateral down up front. Do people ever bristle at that? I have to put all my capital up front, or they kind of understand that's really the rules of engagement right now in the decentralized world?
Definitely something we have spent time looking into. And we're actually close to releasing the second version of our protocol by the end of the year, which it's kind of one of its main goals is to tackle capital efficiency. So in this next version, we allow basically long options to collateralize short options, so you can have capital efficiency from spreads. And we're also going to have liquidation and naked options be able to be collateralized with less than 100% collateralization. So yeah, I mean, I think that, it is a trade-off in the space, but I think that the future of decentralized options will include more beneficial capital treatment for sure.
That's another interesting wrinkle of the decentralized space itself. Now, obviously, it offers a lot of advantages. The downsides are even basic things that people take for granted in the traditional options world, Andrew, like offsetting margin, for example, are very challenging to do in a decentralized environment. So it sounds like you guys are coming to grips with that slowly but surely, Andrew.
Yeah, I think so. I think the traditional financial market, gives us a lot of insights into what works, what doesn't work. And, so we've looked at things like, Reg T margining, portfolio margining, and, how can we, implement things like this in a decentralized system. And there are additional challenges, certainly. It's much easier if you kind of run software on fast computers that you can control and no one else can access that, calculate, margin requirements, et cetera. It's definitely a larger challenge when it's, done in a decentralized way on Ethereum.
And you mentioned ETH, so give us a quick breakdown. Obviously, that's the core product people are coming to you for, but what can I trade these O tokens on? What underlyings do you guys currently offer over there at Open, Andrew?
Yeah, so the main options are Ethereum. We also have wrapped Bitcoin options, which are an iteration of Bitcoin on Ethereum. And And then we have a lot of what are called ERC20 assets. So those are like tokens that are on the Ethereum blockchain. So some of them include something like UNI, which is the Uniswap governance tokens. We have options on UNI. We have options on Wi-Fi, Synthetics, Compound. And most recently, we launched the first index option in crypto. So there's a recent index. It's called the DPI index, which is a lot of decentralized finance tokens. And so we launched options on this DPI index.
And let's talk about that because obviously you mentioned the American style and how these options are constructed. People are used to being able to go out to a traditional options exchange. They see their quotes out there and they say, okay, I want to sell this put or maybe buy this call or whatever it is they want to do. They have a price. They can hit it. Maybe they lift an offer or maybe they work it in between and they're used to maybe having some sort of expectation for a fill. But how do you guys operate over there on Open? Obviously, it's kind of hard to have market makers when everything is decentralized. So you are effectively just matching up orders there. How are you guys actually putting these trades together?
So one of the interesting things that has come out in the decentralized finance system is the concept of an AMM or an automated market maker. And so an example of that, the most kind of well-known example is something called Uniswap. And basically what it is it's a computer program that determines the prices that, you can buy or sell an asset at. And it has basically a slippage function that kind of guarantees that there's always a price for any size trade up to like the limit of the assets that are in the pool. And so what we use is we actually use Uniswap for the current options trading. And so basically anyone can interact with the options that we have that are listed on Uniswap and they can buy or sell them. And so that's the current iteration. We are working on option-specific AMMs that are designed for kind of some of the complexities of options, which might not be as relevant in kind of a spot market, which is what Uniswap is kind of designed for. And there are also some decentralized order book style exchanges that exist, and I think those will kind of in the future. I think order book style exchanges, along with AMMs or options, will be two venues that options trade on in the future.
So there are effectively some quotes being disseminated or something analogous to that, where if you come in and try to hit them or lift them, you have a reasonable expectation of getting the trade done then, Andrew?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah. So, ultimately on our website, we kind of list the spot prices on Uniswap, and people can trade, kind of directly through our front end, would interact with Uniswap, and a very reasonable expectation of liquidity at that price.
I think we have Zubin back. Zubin, are you with us, sir?
Yes, I am.
There he is. All right, the magic of technology never fails. Except when you need it. Then, of course, it becomes challenging.
Exactly.
But, we're talking here with Andrew about some of the challenges of liquidity. I know in a traditional environment, you go out to a big, top 5 options name right now, like an Apple, and you start getting pretty far away from front month at the money, that liquidity, even in a big name, can get a little bit harder to find. So how challenging is it for you guys and indeed for your end users to come out and trade, let's say, some of these O tokens on a name like ETH that's beyond just, let's say, front month at the money, getting out there a little bit and getting farther away from the strikes? How challenging is it to source that liquidity?
I mean, I think it's a challenge, as you mentioned, for any protocol or any project that's working on options. The thing that's really cool, I kind of just want to echo what Andrew just said. The idea of an AMM like Uniswap is actually a new financial invention that came out of the cryptocurrency space that is basically built for always-on liquidity without a centralized market maker. And so this AMM space has actually been exploding in popularity and has given so much of the liquidity that decentralized financial markets have had over the last year or two. And Uniswap, being like the main example of that, has more than $3 billion now of liquidity. And this is a new project that didn't even exist a year and a half ago, right? And so I think there's a lot of interesting research on how to build liquidity without centralized market makers. that is coming out of the space. And at Open, we're working on a piece of code that functions as a market maker, an AMM for options. And there must have been, a little bit of jargon there that I went through, but the idea is there is no, the big name market makers for options are not yet playing in the option space for crypto. And so without centralized market makers, we need to get inventive. And this is some of the really interesting, I think, groundbreaking financial research that's coming out of the decentralized financial space right now.
Yeah, that is truly fascinating. Maybe we could spend a future show maybe getting into all the machinations of creating that, because you're right, all the different functions that go into market making, risk management, providing deep and liquid and accurate and timely quotes, all those things are very challenging. So to be able to provide that in some sort of automated fashion, if you can even get a fraction of the way there, that's fairly impressive, and certainly may hopefully open some eyes on the more traditional option side of the fence to say, hey, there's some opportunities in the markets over here, and maybe get them to come over and help to provide a little bit of extra liquidity. Speaking of that liquidity and your platform, you guys have an interesting insight into what's trading out there right now. So break it down for our audience. What's the hot thing on your platform right now? Are folks really flocking into ETH puts? Is there some other, more obscure product that people are gobbling up the calls on? Maybe what's really trading right now on Open?
Yeah, this is a great question. Andrew, you can continue.
Sorry, yeah. So I was going to say, I think one of the ones that's been most interesting for people recently has been options on Uni, which is the Uniswap governance token that was recently released. So as people may know, there was a large airdrop where anyone that used Uniswap over, its history was given a certain amount of tokens. And so, we saw a ton of volume across Uniswap calls and puts recently. Some of our largest volumes to date. I think another thing that's been interesting that we see in the DeFi space, particularly, is there are a lot of people that are interested in using options as a yield generating asset. So, selling puts if, you're bullish on the underlying asset and, want to, kind of set a limit order and happy to buy it if it goes below that price. I think those are kind of the flows that we see most in the space, I would say, unless you have anything to add, Zubin.
Yeah, I think that's a great insight, Andrew. And one thing that's starting to become interesting as well is it's a new product that we just launched this week is a index option, or an option on the index called the DeFi Pulse Index. So the equivalent to equities for the decentralized financial world is tokens. And so the top projects, Open ourselves, we don't have a token at this moment in time, but there are some incredibly interesting and very technically kind of innovative projects that have tokens, and people are starting to create indices for these. And that's also, just looking at how popular S&P 500 options are and generally options on indices in traditional finance, that's something we're really excited about as well.
Yeah, it certainly is an interesting project as well. We have to keep rolling with the show. But before we do, I'm kind of curious, because one of the interesting things that really fascinates me on a program like this is the intersection of the more traditional financial world and these new markets. We just talked about them with the automated market making and the having to use collateral to function for the counterparty risk, and all the other steps and hurdles have to be overcome to kind of bridge the gap out there. And obviously we've seen crypto options and futures offered on more established traditional venues like CME and others, sometimes with more success than others. So it is interesting to watch the different approaches on this space. You have this clearly decentralized effort. You have a fully centralized, fully cleared, fully regulated effort on a venue like CME. And there's been some interesting challenges. It seems like the volume is ticking up now, but in the early days, it really wasn't exploding out there. I'm curious for you guys, do you think these two worlds can really coexist? Do you think there really can be a lot of crypto derivatives volume on a venue that's listed and regulated and centralized? Or do you think really for the lion's share of this audience, it really has to take place on a platform like this that is really much more in speaking with the core ethos of crypto, which is decentralized, no real counterparties, no real type of regulation, much more free and open. You think that's really the future, the home of crypto derivatives? Or maybe you think these two worlds can coexist and feed volume onto one another? At the end of the day, the large banks and the platforms that push a lot of the volume, they're a little bit, shall we say, afraid of diving into some of those more decentralized waters. So maybe a listed venue can provide a bit of a gateway for them. How do you think these two worlds coexist going forward? Do you think maybe they don't? Maybe you think one wins out at the end?
Oh, it's such a great question. It's a fascinating question. I think, when a new financial asset comes out, usually these large banks and incumbents are the first to jump on it. And they have such deep pools of liquidity, such strong relationships, such trust in them that they usually gobble it up and they end up providing most of the liquidity there. But what's happening in crypto is new funds and new firms that market make and provide liquidity are starting to take that kind of core central spot when it comes to adding liquidity, because the traditional participants are shying away from this market a little bit. It seems like they don't understand it, or they're a little bit scared of the regulatory questions here, but this is a real opportunity for new and innovative and completely different thinking firms to be central parts of the financial ecosystem. And that's really exciting. And I think you will see banks and you will see traditional market makers jumping in. They're already starting to do that. But that's going to be a longer term question. And to me, that's exciting. It's exciting that there's going to be this entirely new topology, this entirely new set of participants in a market that's growing so quickly.
Well, guys, I appreciate you joining us in the crypto hot seat. We have to keep rolling with the rest of our program. But before we do, if our listeners are intrigued, maybe they're curious, they want to kick the tires over there on Open for themselves, or maybe you want to leave them with a little bit of a hint, a little bit of a tease of what's coming down the pike from you guys in the coming months. Now is the time. The floor is yours.
Yeah, I think if you're excited about the way, the crypto ecosystem is evolving, Open is an extremely interesting way to kind of learn about that. The best ways are at opyn.co, OPYN.co, or on Twitter, we're at Open_. And I think there's just so many interesting things, if you're interested in finance, coming out of the crypto ecosystem, that I'm sure the rabbit hole will be really interesting to all your listeners.
It certainly is a deep rabbit hole. I'm sure we'll have you guys on again in the near future to discuss it all. So check it out over there for yourselves. Listeners, you can give them a follow on the old Twitters at Open_, OPYN_, or give them a follow on the old website as well at Open, OPYN.co. Thanks again for joining us in the hot seat, gents, and good luck with all these initiatives. And I'm sure we'll be checking in with you guys again in the near future.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having us.
Thanks for having us.
All right, and now we have to keep on rolling right on into the Bitcoin breakdown.
It's time to explore the latest trading activity, trends, and developments across the world's leading crypto market. It's time for the Bitcoin Breakdown.
All right, everybody. Welcome to the Bitcoin Breakdown, the portion of the show where we do exactly that. We break down all the activity, the options, the futures, the OI, the vol, the Skew, all that good stuff in the world's leading digital asset. Of course, we're talking about the big dog, Bitcoin. It has been another interesting week, shall we say, out there in the land of the big dog. Last week, coming into the showtime, was around not even 11,750, about 11,740 on Bitcoin. And today's show, coming into the start of the show, is a little bit shy of 13,000, about 12,900. Puts it up nearly 1,200 handles from this time last week. Of course, a lot of things have popped off since then, not the least of which been, of course, PayPal deciding to allow a little bit of crypto and Bitcoin in particular to be used on their platform. And of course, that drove a lot of interest, a lot of attention. Of course, a lot of other fun things, driving a little volume, a little volatility out there as well. Let's get into that. Let's go back first. Let's look back over the last 30 days, see what the realized vol is out there in Bitcoin. And it's pretty much exactly the same as it was last show. It's right. It was about 33 last show. It's about 34% this week. So over that last 30 days, not a lot has happened to really change that frame of reference. Of course, as we keep rolling, that will change a little bit, particularly with this past move over this past week. Then we have the implied. So again, looking ahead for the next 30 days, see what the implied volatility is, a.k.a. the market's best guess of what volatility will be over the next 30 days. That's also relatively unshred, around 49%. It was pretty much the same level last week as well. So despite the fact that we had some movement week to week, net on the vol front, not a huge change. Skew changing a little bit. The Bitcoin skew, remember that's a 25 delta call, 25 delta put. If you don't know what any of that means, I encourage you to check out some of our educational shows on the network like Options Bootcamp or Options Playbook Radio. Those explain all that and a lot more in great detail. Those also go live on our network every Wednesday on Education Wednesdays. You can check them out live. Same place you check out Crypto Rundown live and everything else we do here on the network. That skew has shifted a bit. It was minus 10.5% on the show last week. This week, coming up a little bit, down to about only a mere minus 7% out there. OI also looking strong out there, aggregated across most of the major venues. We're back beyond the highs we saw back in September. Once September expiration rolled off the board, a lot of that OI went away. Now a lot of it is back north of 2.5 billion. At least it was a few sessions ago. It's ticked below it, but right about 2.5 billion aggregated total OI across all of the major venues. Of course, that's DEREBIT, that's CME. Should be backed hopefully someday. Not so much right now. OKEX, LedgerX, Bit.com. Even throw a little Huobi in there as well. In fact, let's break it down by venue. Obviously, DEREBIT, the big dog, a little bit less big though. This week, about 72%. Usually it's higher than that. That's because CME's ticking up a little bit. They're up to about 15%. And then we've got Bit.com and OKEX tied at about 5%. And then LedgerX bringing up the rear there at 3%. Not a lot of numbers yet on the board for Huobi and zero for BAKKT out there. In terms of Bitcoin options volume, let's go to the big dog first, DEREBIT. They actually had some pretty big action this past week. The big day was on the 21st. I do believe that is when that news broke. We saw 459 million worth of notional changing hands on DEREBIT that day. That's a lot larger even than the big day we saw on our last show, which was 316 million. Before that, we saw some highs back in late September of 227 million and 262 million. So again, 459 million, that's a pretty big spike for DEREBIT. In terms of the big prints we saw over the course of the past week, surprise, surprise, a lot of them came on that day, the 21st. The largest print we saw was a 500 lot of the March 7,000 puts, so pretty far out of the money. Don't have a side on this one. They went up 500 times for 0.015 Bitcoin when Bitcoin was north of 13,086 out there. So interesting stuff on the 21st. We also saw a couple of other sizable prints. These actually coming a little bit later in the week. On the 23rd, a 200 lot of the Nove 16,000 calls going up. Looks like around the same time as 175 lot vertical, the 12,500, 13,500 vertical in October. Pretty close timing, maybe unrelated trades, but it wouldn't surprise me if they were perhaps related. Again, those going up. Again, no sides on those, but all done when Bitcoin was around 12,922 to 12,951. It's not that far away from where it is right now. I also saw a 300 lot of the Nove 13,000s going up also on the 23rd, and that was done when Bitcoin was at 12,907. So interesting and some sizable trades going up here this week. Let's see. Today, coming into Showtime, not a lot on the tape over there at DEREBIT today. The biggest and most active contract are the 10,500 puts in October with about 500 and change on the tape. Also the 10,000 puts in November, also about 500 and change as well. Those are number two. So a little bit of out-of-the-money put action on DEREBIT today. Let's look where the action is across the expiration months here, see where most of the action is aggregating. October, now the big dog with about 61,000 contracts open coming into Showtime. Again, that's aggregated across all of the major platforms. Now, that's not much compared to some recent months. We saw June had about 114,000 worth of open contracts out there. August had about 62,000, so a little more in August. And September had about 87,000. Not so much yet for October. We got a little bit more time, not much. You got a few more days for October to grow. So it doesn't seem like October is really going to usurp September, and certainly not June out there. The big dog behind it is December with nearly 40,000 contracts opened, followed by November with about 31,000, and then March with about 28,000 or close to it out there. Remember, crypto likes a quarterly, so decent March. Expect those to come on strong. In terms of where the action is on a strike basis, it's the 12,000 strike. Go figure. Back in the lead now that we've broken through it. It's about number one with about 15,000 contracts. It's a pretty clear number one. The closest behind it is the 11,000 strike with 13,500. So even though he broke through 13,000, that strike is number three with only about 13,000 open. So pretty far behind the 12,000 strike. But again, the 12,000 strike's been open for a while. People were opening on it even when we were much farther south in the Bitcoin range. So maybe not surprising that 13,000 has a little bit of a ways to go to catch up with it out here. In terms of the options front, we were just talking earlier with the open guys about the centralized side of the crypto option space. Not a heck of a lot going on over there on CME this week. Most of the days had about 150 contracts or less. And I remember that's a 5x contract, so it's a little bit more than the numbers may imply, but still not a heck of a lot of paper on the tape. Decent volume on the futures front, though, over there on CME. About 6,000 contracts on the tape today. Again, 5x contract over there on the futures front. Thursday, 9,000 contracts, and Wednesday was the big day with about 12,000 contracts on the tape, followed by Monday with about 7,400. So a decently active week. Again, not blowing the doors off on the futures front either, but a little bit of something. Our old friend, the BAKKT volume bot, checking in on what's lighting up the futures front at BAKKT, and they had about 7,722 contracts going up. That's up about 2%. So I guess a little bit of a gain for them. Their all-time high in terms of trading volume was about nearly 19,000 contracts. That was back in mid-September, and their OI is about 15.5 million. That's actually up about 3%. So maybe the BAKKT futures trending in the right direction, even though the options not so much. Now it's time for us to trend on into our next segment, and it's time to explore the altcoin universe.
It's time to move beyond Bitcoin and find out what's moving the rest of the crypto marketplace. It's time to boldly venture into the altcoin universe.
All right, everybody, welcome to the altcoin universe, the portion of the show where we break down everything outside of the big dog that is Bitcoin, except for right here when we break down the market cap. Again, standard caveat applies. Take these overall market cap numbers with a bit of a grain of salt. Number 10, Bitcoin SV. We're at a little bit north of 3 billion, about 3.1 billion, followed by Litecoin, number 9, 3.6 billion. Number 8, good old Polkadot, 3.9 billion. Number 7, Binance Coin, 4.4 billion. Number 6, Chainlink, almost 4.5 billion. Number 5, Bitcoin Cash, 4.7 billion. Number 4, XRP, a little bit north of 11 billion. That means number 3, still Tether, 16.3 billion. Number 2, ETH, 43.75 billion. And the big dog, once again, Bitcoin, well back north of the 200B level at 238 billion. All right, let's see. Let's dive into the number 2 dog out there, the smaller puppy to Bitcoin. That is ETH. Even though if the folks in the DeFi space and everyone else have their way, ETH may someday be the number 1 big dog out there. Decent week for ETH as well, up almost 5.5 handles from last week. We had about a 381 and change on the last show, and this week coming in almost 387, 386, 94. Let's look at the vol first. Vol actually coming in, which is kind of interesting, down quite a bit. 30-day realized, again, that's looking back 30 days, is down to about 45% from 61%. So we saw a pretty aggressive shrinking of vol over that previous 30-day period. Let's look forward, see if we see the same shrinkage on the vol front, and actually not so much. Pretty much unched. It's about 58% this week. It was about 56% last week. So pretty much staying firm right around that mid to high 50s range out there in ETH land. Let's look at the volume front. You can probably guess what the big volume day was in ETH options last week. Yep, it was the 21st as well. About 52 million worth of notional going up over there on DEREBIT. That compares pretty well to some recent highs we've seen. We saw on the 12th, 37 million worth of notional, 32 million on the 2nd, and 45 million is the closest we got. That was back on September 21st. So pretty big day out there on the 21st here last week. Also seeing pretty good numbers out there on the OI front. OI just getting close between DEREBIT and OKEX and a little bit of Huobi. Adding those all together, just within spitting distance of 500 million out there. It kissed it a couple of days ago, and now it's come off a little bit. So now it's about more like 475 million. So getting close to that 500 million level, ever so close, just last week. And then some of that coming off. Ripple coming off a little bit as well, ever so slightly. On our last show, we saw good old XRP at about 24.8, and now it's about 24.5. So not a huge move out there in XRP land as well. And our old friends Bitcoin Cash and Bitcoin SV also both moving. Bitcoin Cash up nearly 4 handles, about 387 from last show. And Bitcoin SV getting a nice little lift up 10.66 from this time last week. All right, and that's going to do it for this episode of the Crypto Rundown. I want to thank our guests for joining us over there from the land of OPYN, ZUBIN, and Andrew. Check them out if you haven't done so already at OPYN, OPYN.co on the web front, or at OPYN_ on the old Twitter machine. If you like the notion of options in the DeFi space, well then, go check them out. Check out those OTOKENs. Interesting concept, and interesting to see the levels people have to go to in the decentralized space to try to replicate some of the functionality that we take for granted in the listed world. It's an interesting project. We wish those guys luck. We'll probably have to check in with them again fairly soon. And I thank all of you out there for downloading, streaming, subscribing, for sending in your questions. Keep them coming. Keep those reviews coming on your platform of choice as well. And we'll see you back here throughout the week. Tomorrow we got the advisors option coming back. We got Education Wednesday, of course, with Options Bootcamp, Options Playbook Radio. Thursday, back to the well with episode 2 of the option block, as well as This Week in Futures Options. We round it all off again on Friday with volatility views, and we come back again on Monday with another episode of the Crypto Rundown.
You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app, available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.